come up with. The FAA, it was the Transportation Security Agency, came up with the Large Aircraft Security Program. The Large Aircraft Security Program said for every aircraft 12,500 pounds or more, you had to go through the same security requirements as a commercial aircraft. You know, that gets pretty onerous if you think about it. Somebody who owns an airplane can't go out and get in their private owned vehicle and go where they want to go without getting the permission from a government agent. That is the largest intrusion into our civil liberties in recent history. And if you think about it, it's based on weight and volume. They think for that size aircraft that you could put enough explosive in there that you could fly it into a building and do some significant damage. Well, Timothy McVeigh didn't fly an airplane, he drove a truck. And if you look at the weight and volume requirements, it's about the size of a minivan. So you carry this logic out into the rest of America, and you get at the scenario where I'm sitting in my minivan and saying, yes, this is Todd T Heart, I have my grandchildren with me, and I'd like to go to Dillon's store. Do I have permission to pull onto the public street? I mean, it's that ridiculous. So I think this, we're fighting that. We've formed a little coalition of people who are interested in aircraft and pilots, and we're trying to get that legislation from coming before the FAA and becoming before Congress to becoming law. What I would like to see happen now is for us to expand the bonus depreciation for aircraft. You know, following September 11th, 2001, we implemented it, I think, in January of 2003, if I remember right. And I had a Cessna salesman meet me in the airport one time, we happened to be on the same flight, and he said that once the bonus depreciation became law, he sold more aircraft in the first 6 days than he had over the previous 6 months. It'd be pretty good about getting our folks back on track when it comes to going to work. And I'm in the process of trying to negotiate a fee or the level of depreciation. I would like to have 65% of the cost being able to be written off the first year, and then go to 25, 5, and 5, and that would get to the 100% depreciation over 5 years. But it's a tremendous incentive to get people to order aircrafts now. When I look at the community around here, and down in Wellington, there were people who were laid off from the Cessna company who came to the town hall meeting to ask me to do something to try to get things going. I think from my experience, the biggest shot in the arm would be a bonus depreciation because it has a good motivator. It's better than what we tried to do through the defense bill, where they're going to try to buy 8 corporate jets, 5 737s, and 3 Gulfstream. And instead of taking that $400 million and doing that, why don't we use the $400 million for bonus depreciation? We'd sell a whole lot more airplanes, we'd get a whole lot more people back to work, and that seems to me to be the best solution for that. That's that problem that we're facing today. Before I take your questions, I want to talk a little bit about health care. This bill is stirred up more concern than anything I've seen in recent history, and I think it's sort of building up. I think the concern actually started with the stimulus bill, and we saw evidence of that with tea parties. Now, I don't know how many of you actually went to a tea party. The media said that it was more about paying taxes and it was opposition to Obama. It wasn't about either of those things. It was about concern people have about the amount of money the federal government is borrowing and spending. I saw the signs. I went to 2 of them in the Johnson County area. Saw over 5,000 people who had taken time off of work to come out and join as part of a protest. In Kansas alone, there were 34 tea parties. My wife went to 4. And their message was the same throughout the state, and from what I saw from the signs across the nation, where 500,000 people came out on April 15th last spring and protested the government spending. So that was a very clear voice. I think there was another voice heard in the state of California where they had 6 referendums up on the ballot this year. 5 of them were to raise taxes, and one was to tell the legislature they can't have a pay raise until they balance the budget. Only one passed. Care to guess which one it was? And now we see it with this health care bill. But from what I'm hearing, it's an extension of the concern that people have that they're going to lose control of their health care decisions. They won't be able to choose their doctor. They won't be able to choose their health care plan. That will be limited because of the incentives on employers to move to this single payer plan. And I think they're just concerned about the cost. It's $1.5 trillion. This year, most people know that we're going to run a deficit of close to $2 trillion. But not everybody understands what $1 trillion is. Has anybody out here written a check for $1 trillion? I'd like to meet you if you have. $1 trillion, to give you some kind of idea of the size and scope of it, if you had started a business the day after Christ rose from the dead and made $1 million that day and every day until today, in other words, $1 million for every day for 2,000 years, you'd only be about 3/4 of the way to $1 trillion. It's a tremendous amount of money. We're going to overspend by almost $2 trillion this year. So we have a huge challenge on our hand, and that's what behind it. They are upset about some other things like the end-of-life counseling. Starting at age 65, every American is supposed to have counseling on their end-of-life options and repeat it every 5 years. You have to give access to all your financial data to the federal government under this bill. You also have to give them access to your checking account so they can directly withdraw from your account. There's some other things about taxes going up on the private sector. I think probably as business people, the biggest thing I am concerned about, see, I'm on Blue Cross Blue Shield myself. I pay Social Security, although there's a rumor on the internet that I don't, but I do. All members of Congress do. But I'm concerned that I won't have the ability to choose my health care plan. I have a choice of about 6 plans right now that have bid to provide services to government workers, and I chose Blue Cross Blue Shield because it works best for me and my wife. But many people who have a private insurance plan now, if their employer doesn't move them to that plan, he'll have to pay an 8% surcharge on a 2% tax on top of that. And when you add those taxes together, in Kansas, it will put, for a small business, it will put their average federal tax at over 50%, 53.9%. So I don't know how we're going to grow our economy when we increase taxes like that. That's a big concern. But also, it forces employers to put their people into a public health care plan, like Medicaid. Now, Medicaid never pays the full cost of the services that are provided. So in every physician's office, every clinic, and every hospital, they shift costs from the private insurance to cover the shortfall in public insurance. And as we shrink that private insurance side and expand the public payment side, we're going to experience rationing. There's just no way else to work the math. So there's a lot of concern about that. Last thing I want to mention before I take questions is cap and trade, or cap and tax as I called it. Cap and trade was an energy bill that's supposed to reduce greenhouse gases. The scientists in the government say that we won't be able to measure that for the next 50 or 100 years, but it'll still cost us about $1,000 per person per year to have cap and trade. I think what the real purpose of it is to pay for this health care plan. It's just a revenue generator. It's not really good for the environment. It's certainly not good for our economy. But it did pass the House, and there was quite a bit of pushback from members here in Kansas. Dennis Moore was the only member of Kansas to vote for it. I talked to one of the 8 Republicans that voted for it. It came up right before the 4th of July recess, and so after the recess, I sat down next to him on the floor of the House in the first series of votes. And I had a pretty nice 4th of July, so I thought I'd ask him, how was your 4th of July? He was from New Jersey, and he said, it was the worst week of my life. And I said, why? He said, because I voted for cap and trade. I mean, people out there are kind of getting the message. They didn't, if you knew the details, besides the tremendous costs, we also lose control of our own thermostats. And it's just little things like that that really upset people, If there's too much demand on the grid, they'll raise the temperature in the summer or lower it in the winter. And those of us Kansans who are fiercely independent don't like that. And but that's just kind of typical of the philosophy that's going on in Washington, D.C. today, whether it's healthcare or energy or the environment. They don't trust Americans to do the right thing, so they're going to dictate to us what we're going to do. I'm opposed to that. I'll continue that battle as long as you give me the ability to do it. Be glad to take your questions, but before you ask the first question, I want you to remember, I'm very good with true-false questions.